I don't think this is the same house on Willow Street, but it could be. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to it in the description below, and it'll give you a pretty good overview of what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about. Basically, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But this is our Is It Syllabus-Worthy series. This is where you guys give me a recommendation in the comments to the videos, something that I haven't seen before, a horror movie I've never seen before. I watch it for the first time, and then I let you know. Is it syllabus worthy? Is it good enough, notorious enough, interesting enough, unique enough to make it onto the horror movie syllabus? And today we're looking at the movie House on Willow Street. And House on Willow Street was recommended to us by the illustrious Fungus Among Us, who has given us many a good recommendation in the past, and he knows his stuff when it comes to horror. So I'm up for this one. And he recommended this in our kidnapping video. So I had an idea already from that it's a kidnapping movie. And Fungus had told us that it's about a kidnapping gone wrong, where the kidnappers wind up getting more than they bargained for. That was the tease of the movie. And that's a pretty good tease, frankly. That sounds like something that I'd be interested in watching. And then, I looked it up. Didn't do anything to spoil the movie. Didn't watch the trailer. Didn't read a synopsis or anything like that. Just saw the movie poster when I was pulling up the movie. It looked pretty creepy. Looked pretty intense. So it was something that I was definitely excited to watch. I do like kidnapping movies. I do think this is a fun subgenre. Fun being relative, and you get it. You get it. But I was game for this one, so I went in blind. Didn't want to know anything else about it. Dove right in, and well, did I like it? Did I hate it? Let's find out. Like I said, the movie that we're looking at today is House on Willow Street. House on Willow Street came out in 2016 and is also called From a House on Willow Street. I'm not really sure why the different titles, but apparently it is known by both titles. And it was directed and written by a man named Alistair Orr, and also co-written by somebody named Jonathan Jordan. And I'm not familiar with the work of either of these people, so I can't really speak one way or another to how good they are or anything other than how they did on this movie, which is, something that we're going to talk about. We're going to delve into that because it is something that I don't have the cleanest of opinions on, frankly. So if you haven't seen it, the movie is about a group of criminals who have a plot to kidnap a young girl and hold her for ransom because her father has access to diamonds. And they want to do a quick score and get out because of these personal issues. They need to do this rather quickly with a little bit less planning than they would like. And the actual snatching goes off without a hitch, seemingly. But when they get back to their hideout and they've got the girl in their possession, things start to go strange because she is not what they thought and the situation is not what they thought. And I will stop there because hijinks abound at that point, and I don't want to spoil the hijinks for you if you haven't seen it. But the movie is an interesting setup. It's a really great concept, in my opinion, a great idea that has a lot of potential for a lot of fun things to happen. It's a simple concept, but it's one that I think works really well and is set up rather well. We start with the criminals and them talking about their plan to kidnap this girl. And right off the bat, you're seeing the stress that they're under. You're seeing the situation is not as ideal as it should be for their success. And yet they're going to go through with it anyways because of these external pressures that are causing them to do things in a bit of a rush. They need the money they need to get this job done rather quickly. And so they're maybe taking risks that they shouldn't take. Strong setup. You've got a cast of characters that are interesting, actors that are pulling it off. Sharni Vinson is the kind of the leader of the group. Sharni Vinson from Your Next, she played the protagonist Erin, who is a pretty memorable character to horror fans. So she's got some goodwill there, and she's playing a very different kind of character here, for better and for worse. We're going to get into that in just a minute. But all the actors are characters. They all kind of like wind up being these almost caricature-y, but in a kind of a good way, set up characters. They are very memorable and identifiable, and they seem unique, and they're all interesting. And they have this plan that you know is flawed out the get-go, and yet when they start to implement it, it goes off seemingly rather well. There's some weird things happening, but they're not things that derail the plan, and it starts out rather successfully. And this all happens really quickly. This all happens in the first, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes of the movie, because the movie's moving really well. And then they move to their hideout, and that's where things start to go pretty strange. And it's a testament to this movie, which is a low budget movie. It's clearly a low budget movie, but they've set it up in a way with a small cast and minimal locations, basically just 2 locations that everything happens in, to keep the cost down. And yet they've done it in a way that fits the story and makes it work really well. Almost an addition to the story, in the sense that you get a little bit of a claustrophobic feeling when you're in both locations, even though they are somewhat spacious. They do a good job of letting the locations feed into the mood of the movie. And that's really one of the strengths of this movie, is that it's well shot. It's competently directed. The aesthetic of the movie is very creepy. It's got a great mood. It's really setting the tone rather well. You know something's not going to go right, because you know you're watching a horror movie, but you don't know exactly what it's going to be, and you're just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop. And that sense of impending dread is palpable in the movie. They do a really good job with the start of this movie, setting that up. You're kind of wondering what's going to happen. Everything's shadowy and dark, and you've got this feeling of being enclosed, and kind of this claustrophobic or tight feeling. It's a really, really well done. Where the cracks start to show a bit is in the script, because while the script has a good setup, the idea, the concept is good, the dialogue in particular is a challenge. It's frankly kind of terrible. It's rote at best, and just clunky and like cheesy at worst. And it's a shame, because everybody in the movie seems good to really good in terms of acting. All the criminals, and even the victim, the kidnapped girl, who's quite good. She's very creepy and suitably unsettling, but also seeming like a victim. She does a really good job with it. And everybody, like I said, they're kind of caricature, but in I think a good way. So they're all game, but they're saddled with this script of just like very clunky dialogue that is trying to drive the plot forward, trying to fill in backstory in a way that is clunky. Like I said, it's very exposition dumpy, especially later in the movie, when you get to these videos, and I won't spoil it, but they get to these videos to see what was going on in the house on Willow Street, and the videos are just a massive exposition jump. It's just feeding you all of the information you need for the back story and the lore, and there are these backstories for all the characters that they're trite, they're kind of clunky, they're just, I don't know, just not terribly compelling and not done very artfully. It's a big problem, because that middle section where the script really kind of comes to the forefront, it really kind of slows things down a little bit. It's hard to stay into the movie, because you're just kind of being told a lot of stuff rather than being shown a lot of stuff. And you, like you said, you're getting these backgrounds of these characters, the motivations for why they're doing what they're doing, but it's done in such an artless and ham-fisted way that it feels a little eye-rolly. You have this whole backstory or lore around what is happening. And again, I'm dancing around it because I'm trying not to spoil it, but this lore is just, it's kind of like made up. It's like they just kind of made up some rules and put them on videotapes for the characters to watch, so that they, and by extension us, the audience, would know what the rules are. And it comes very late in the game too. So it's just awkward. It's awkward storytelling. It's not super clean. It's not super tight. And it's a little bit of a tough one, because the ending of the movie kind of shows the missed potential of the whole movie in terms of the script. Because the ending, I actually enjoyed the ending quite a bit. It's not perfect, but it gives you a little bit of a flavor of what this movie could have been, especially with Sharni Vincent in there, who is the standout in the movie, because she's just a good actor, and you know what she can do in movies like You're Next, and she feels like she's a little hamstrung here again by the script. But by the end of the movie, you get a little bit more of a taste of what, at least what I was expecting to see from Sharni Vincent in this movie, and what I would have liked to have seen more throughout the movie. You see glimmers of it, but it doesn't really come out full force until the end of the movie. And again, I know I'm dancing around it without explaining it, because I don't want to spoil the ending, but you get the idea that there was a more fun movie here, but it kind of was a little bit more self-serious, and the script, while being kind of clunky and not really, clever or artful when it came to filling in all the backstory and details and stuff, it really focuses instead on the jump scares of the movie. And jump scares are perfectly fine, especially if they're done well. The issue here is that they're not super effective because they're repetitive. It's a lot of the same kind of jump scares over and over again. You get, these you get things coming out and surprising people, and it's so many of them, and it's mostly the same thing over and over again, that repetition really starts to make a movie that feels that was originally paced really well start to feel like it's dragging. It starts to feel a little bit of a slog, even though it's not. It's a fleet movie. It's actually paced really, really well, but you start to get the same kind of jump scares over and over again. You start to be able to predict the jump scares. They're not very effective. And not for nothing, but there's, CGI used in the jump scares it's not bad, but it's not great. It's perfectly fine. I'd say it's meh, or the kids today would say it's mid, but it's not so bad because the overall aesthetic of the movie, the whole composition of it, is very competent. It's very solid. Like I said, it has a creepy look to it. The way the whole thing is set up, it looks suitably scary and unsettling. So the jump scares are helped by that. And as a result, the CGI feels like it's a little more forgivable, a little less of an issue. So I didn't have a problem with the CGI. That was not the issue. The issue was just the jump scares were very frequent. They were very repetitive and very similar. And you would just not even dialed them down, but just varied them up a little bit so they didn't feel so repetitive. I think they would have been a lot more effective. So that's where you really kind of run into a buzzsaw on this movie, is that you've got a script that's focused on just having things jump out at you rather than milking that tension and that creepy aesthetic for all it's worth, and giving us more well-rounded characters who had interactions that felt more natural and realistic rather than like they're trying to feed you information, you the audience information. It would have been a stronger way to go about telling the story, to ride that tension, that threat, that dread, that the thriller aspect of it, rather than the jump scare aspect of it, which it's a choice. It's a choice. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just a choice. But for me, I felt like the choice was not the one I would have made, in particular because they didn't nail it. They didn't nail the jump scares as well as they needed to in order to have that paper over the script shortcomings. It's a shame because it's well directed. The performances are fine, and I feel like they would probably be good if the lines of dialogue were better, but unfortunately they're not. So I feel like they got a bunch of actors who are trying to do something with the script that it's limited, and as a result they wind up feeling like kind of like trite stock characters. And again, I've said it earlier, they are kind of caricature-y stock characters in a good way, but then that doesn't ever really pay off. This movie should be having more fun with that. And it doesn't. It's taking itself seriously, which is not a problem for me. I think I would have more fun if it was trying to have fun with it. But I don't have a problem with them making it serious. But the seriousness of it, the scares, and all the motivations behind the scares, all the reasons, the backstories of why things are happening the way they're happening and what's going on, falls a little bit short for me because the script just isn't selling it. It's telling it to me. It's like I'm reading it almost. And then that's a bit of an issue. But how much of an issue is it? Is it enough of an issue to make this not syllabus worthy? Well, let's find out. So, is House on Willow Street syllabus worthy? Nah, probably not. And you could probably have guessed that from what I've been saying. The movie is just a bit on the mediocre side, at least to stand out in all of the subgenres where I think it might be fitting in. It just doesn't measure up to some of the greats that we have in those subgenres already. The movie starts out really strong, like I was saying. It's a really good looking movie, and you've got a cast that's pretty game. You got Sharni Vincent, who's a very welcome addition to the cast. It's something you want to see. And it starts out with a really cool premise that seems like it has a lot of interesting possibilities. And not for nothing, this movie's premise is interesting. It's just the execution, or really specifically the script, that that does it dirty, that makes it fall short, because it's an interesting premise set up really, really well, that loses its way in the middle. It winds up going into a lot of exposition, a lot of backstory, a lot of just random lore that's just kind of thrown out on the screen, and it just kind of falls apart a bit in the middle, and then it finds its way at the end. The end winds up being decent. It is a fun movie, but it's like a little too late at that point. If that fun ending had kind of been running throughout the movie, I think this is a solid contender for making it somewhere onto the syllabus. If it had a tighter script where these characters felt a little bit more realistic, a little more fleshed out, if you connected with these characters more so that you cared about their backstories, so you felt empathy for them, then I think this movie winds up being exponentially better. As it stands, it winds up being a little bit short. It winds up missing the mark to make it as a kidnapping movie, which is the obvious place for it to fit. You could have like a creepy children, potentially a subgenre, maybe some other ones, ghost possessions, whatever. I'm not trying to spoil anything for you, but you get the idea. There's some supernatural elements to this movie. You could find a place to put this on the syllabus if it just did a little bit more of a little bit more work with the script to make the characters resonate, to make them relatable, to make the story, the mythology feel like a little bit more natural as it came out, and to make the scares feel more authentic, or at least more surprising. Because, like I said, it started out with some jump scares, cool, and then it did it again and again and again and again and again, and it became repetitious, and you knew it was coming. And so it didn't scare the way it was trying to scare. It didn't maintain that wonderful sense of dread and a creepy atmosphere that it set up because of these jump scares. It kept, every time you do a jump scare, you release tension, and so all of the tension set up by the location, the lighting, the shots, the acting, all of that stuff that's going really well kind of gets undermined by cheap jump scares that aren't very effective, and then the script that winds up being kind of laughable in a sense, and actually not even laughable because it's not even fun enough or funny enough to be laughable. It's just kind of feeding you exposition. It's a little bit eye rolly, and it's a shame, because that's a not very hard thing to fix. It's a relatively easy fix to just give a script polish, tighten it up a little bit. You can keep the same basic story, the same setup, the same actors, everything. Tighten up the dialogue, figure out how to not have the exposition be so exposition-y and show a little bit more than tell. And you know, not just throwing a video where somebody's telling you all the rules. That's a bit of a that was a scene that really kind of turned me against the movie a bit. And like I said, it started to recover a bit at the end, but it was a little bit late. So this is a movie that I think is worth the time to watch, but not worth putting on the syllabus. But that's my thoughts on House on Willow Street, or From a House on Willow Street. A fun watch, but not. It's a missed potential movie, which is almost a little more frustrating, because I see the potential for it being really, really good, and instead it's merely fine. Again, it's not bad. The bad stuff did not outweigh the good setup and everything like that, but it squandered it a bit, and that's a little bit of a disappointment. So it misses the mark, and it could have made the mark, which is a little bit sad, but there it is. Worth checking out if you like these kind of movies, but manage the expectations. It's not as amazing as some of the other stuff that we've talked about here on the syllabus. Still worth your time, though. So now it's time for me to look at a horror trivia pursuit card, because I want to answer one here on camera and see if I can answer it without cutting. And since this was I told you it was a supernatural movie, and again, without spoiling too much, well, let's just say I'm going to go with the monster category on the card, and we're just going to leave it at that, okay? Because I don't want to spoil any more than I already have. So, because I do think you should check out this movie. So here's the question. What is the ancient Egyptian name of the titular character in 1932's The Mummy? And I know this movie. And I know this answer. I do like me some Universal monsters. I've seen those movies. I do like those movies. We are going to talk about them. We've talked about them a little bit on the channel before with some of our classic monster videos and stuff, but we're going to talk about them even more specifically in the future. I don't know when, but that's coming up. I do have an affinity for this, and they're very popular. Like if you go on YouTube and look for videos about Universal monsters or classic monsters, you'll see it. There's a ton of stuff there. There's a lot of love for these movies that are 100 years old. And there's a good reason for it, because they're good movies. They're really solid movies. And The Mummy is one of them. It's very well known, very famous. And yeah, I know this one. I know this one, because I'm familiar with the movie, the original movie, and I'm familiar with the many different takes on the Mummy over the years. This is a name that tends to get reused over and over again, or kind of persists, endures throughout the different iterations of the Mummy. So I know this one, and yeah, I'm rambling a little bit, and I do this just to give you guys some time, and I'm impressed that I remember this because, as you know, I'm not super good with the names of characters and stuff in the movie, but this is one I do know, and so I'm gonna go ahead and give my answer. But so wrap it up. I mean, I feel like if you don't know this one, you're taking a guess. It'd be a hard one to guess because, unless you're Egyptian, maybe you know this stuff pretty well. You can take a pretty decent guess of an Egyptian name. But if you're not Egyptian, this might be a challenge to guess on it. But hey, take a guess anyways. Don't just leave it blank. Make an answer. So here's my answer. Wrap up your answer. Lock it in. Here's my answer. My answer is Imhotep. Imhotep is the name of the mummy, is the actual name of the mummy. It's not called the mummy in the movie. Let's check the card. Imhotep. And actually has an H in it. I don't think I would have guessed that had an H in it. I think I would have had a hard time spelling it correctly. But fortunately, I wasn't asked to spell it. I was just asked to guess it. And I guessed it correctly. Did you guess it correctly? Did you get that one? I'm guessing a lot of you got that one right because the mummy is a pretty well-known classic monster. He's pop culture icon, if you will. So I'm guessing a lot of people knew that. If not from the original movie, then one of the many iterations going on from, the Universal sequels to the, Brendan Fraser movies. Was he Imhotep in the movies? The Brendan Fraser movie? Can't remember. Let me know in the comments. I think he was. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much to Fungus Among Us for the awesome recommendation. I wish it was a little bit more awesome, but it still felt good. I'm still having a good time watching these movies. You guys are still coming up with great recommendations, so keep them coming. Keep them coming. In the comments below, let me know. Horror movies I haven't seen. I know you're just guessing because you don't know, but let me know. Make the recommendations, and if it's good enough, I haven't seen it, we'll put it on the syllabus, the to watch list, and we'll get to it hopefully in another video. But until then, I'm going to wrap this one up by saying, class dismissed.